JP.
Hey, we running a little late.
We got caught, JP.
Yes, we did. We got caught running our mouth and not paying any attention to what time it was. I mean, we got called out.
Full transparency, JP and I were testing out new intro music, just going song by song, just sharing our thoughts on it. Looked up, it was 704 Friends. So thank you for joining us and hanging with us, even though we're a little late getting started tonight.
Yeah, and all those music options were not very good.
If anyone would like to write us our own song for this podcast, we will be taking your songs into consideration. So just know that in advance. If we have any musicians out there.
The bar is low, so it won't be hard to beat it. The bar
JP,
is very low.
Happy Thursday. Happy game day eve for Clemson baseball. Congrats on a great live show on Monday. How's your week been?
It's been I've been busy. I know everybody's busy at this point of the spring. It's crossover season full effect, and everybody's everywhere. I feel like I've been running a little ragged with all the travel. I think last night was the fourth time I've slept in my bed in like the past 2.5 weeks, something like that. And I'm leaving out again tomorrow. So,
JP, you might have the most trips from Florence to Clemson of anyone in the history of time.
My truck drives itself there at this point.
It knows the way. It's ready to go.
It knows the way.
I'm excited to hear all about your travels with Clemson baseball. Excited to hear about Fluor Field last night in Greenville. Tigers got the big win over Michigan State. How was that experience?
You know, they packed that place pretty good, man. When the coaches meet at home plate for, where they shake hands and talk to the umpires and go over the ground rules and all that stuff, it looked like there was going to be a very sparse crowd. There weren't very many people there. And then all of a sudden you look up and the whole place down there is almost filled in. You got people sitting on top of the wall. It was a pretty good environment. It was, obviously it was basically like a Clemson home game. There were a few Michigan State Spartans over there behind the visiting dugout. But it played out about like I expected it to. Michigan State's not very good. The guy that started for them, he was pretty good. He only went 2 innings. He came in with like a 1.18 ERA. But you knew once you get past him, we're talking about a baseball team that's scoring like 3 runs a game. They had 3 wins on the season, even though I think 2 of those came against Louisville. But since that opening series, they just not fared very well. And a lot of 2-out hits, a lot of 2-out RBIs, and a career night from Jay Dillard. How about that?
Man, I could sit here and talk about Jay Dillard's big night for the whole hour that we have. What a testament to him trusting the process. What a testament to Eric Bakich giving him an opportunity and him taking advantage of it. 4 RBIs, a home run, a double, a monster night from Jay Dillard. That might be the longest home run I've seen hit all season.
407 feet. He crushed that thing, and he's one of those guys that you just pull for, man. He seems like we don't get to talk to him a lot, as far as media stuff, because he doesn't play a lot. But I've had some interactions with him over there beside the dugout, like at the Bananas game and stuff. And he seems like such a good kid, and he's so very respectful. It's always yes, sir, and no, sir, when he's responding to you. Couldn't have happened to a better guy, man. The first thing you think of when you see him out there is, oh, no, Fultz is going to be out for a while. But that doesn't appear to be the case. This guy's, he's in his 4th year with the program. He redshirted his first year. Bakich just painted him as the perfect teammate. Always one of the loudest in the dugout. And it's just a guy you give an opportunity to. Sometimes in the midweek games are the perfect time to do that. And, man, he has not fared well in his limited opportunities coming into last night. I think he was a 118 career hitter. He had 2 hits. He had that many last night. Both of them were extra base hits. That home run though, man, he crushed that ball. I think it was, golly, they told me what it was off the bat, maybe 108. No, not one. Maybe it was 10 something, not 108, not quite that high. But and I asked him after the game what it felt like to sit there and watch that thing go over the fence, and his response was, "I didn't even watch it. I took off running just in case something bad happened. I didn't want to look like an idiot." So he's got that old school style approach. When the ball leaves the bat, he's running.
He said, "I gotta go."
He didn't even watch it go over the fence, and then he had a good night at third base too. I mean, he's just he does what's asked of him, and he finally. I hate to say take advantage of an opportunity, because it's not like baseball is a sport that will humble you quickly. You fail more than you succeed, and he's just not had enough playing time to really have a lot of success. And it was good to see him have some last night.
He's a local kid, grew up a Clemson fan, went to T.L. Hanna, has stayed at Clemson all of his college career, which in today's day and age, we know is getting more and more rare. You don't see many Jay Dillards anymore in college sports, guys that have just stuck it out, waited for opportunities. And so to me, that made it almost sweeter to get to watch him have that success last night. I got so cracked up watching his press conference, talking to you after the game, and pretty much said, "Jay, how were you able to hit that ball so hard?" And he was like, "Credit to the strength coaches. I don't even know," because he's not the biggest guy that there is, but man, he crushed that ball.
I actually asked him, does he routinely hit them like that in practice?
There you go.
But if you, this was the next thing I was going to say. If you kind of look at him, you can tell he's physically matured. He's bigger than he was a year ago or 2 years ago. He's just, kind of thicker. Whether that's just, the norm for a guy his age growing into his body, or the strength conditioning program over there or whatever. He is a different looking cat, and he's starting to become a grown man. But he's never gonna be a 6'3", 220-pound guy. He's more like my size, but he's much more built into that size.
I thought it was such a cool thing to see him do that. And really, JP, we've sat here and we've talked a lot about the pitching depth this season, right? How many pitchers can go and give you good innings on this Clemson team. But that was a testament to me of that they're hitters too, that you can slide in there and feel confident about, and I think Jay Dillard made a case for himself that he deserves to be in the lineup, get some ABs, and more opportunities than just in that situation when Fultz is hurt. I think he's somebody that could come in and potentially actually help the team a lot.
Absolutely. He's the prototypical utility guy. You can slide him at second. You can slide him there at third. There's a couple of different spots you feel comfortable putting him. Bryce Clavon kind of got off the mat and got his first hit since the second game of the season last night. So yeah, at the very least, when you're talking about Dillard, you at least know you got a guy on the bench that if you need to pinch hit in a spot, you feel comfortable. You feel comfortable when he comes to the plate now, because you've seen that he can do it. I just keep going back that it was so enjoyable to watch. Him have that kind of night, and his reaction thereafter, man, he was just, you watched it. He was just all smiles the whole time. I think that's the first time he's ever met with media. It was good to see.
Very happy for him. Very happy for a lot of guys in that win last night. It's a really good feel-good win. You've seen a lot of top 10, top 20 teams really get tripped up in the midweek. LSU lost their third midweek game last night. And that's an underrated part of the season so far, is that they've been pretty dominant against inferior teams. But that's not something to take lightly, that you have pitchers that you can just throw whenever you want on a midweek and feel pretty good that they're not going to give up many runs.
Can't say enough about Eston Simpson. You know, the offense is gonna get a lot of the, you know, publicity, you know, from that performance last night. But Simpson, you know, got his second start of the season, his third appearance, if I'm remembering right. You know, he went four solid innings, a run, scattered 5 hits, struck out 3. And then that bullpen just came in and absolutely locked it down. Hayden Simerson struck out 2 of the 3 hitters he faced. Brendan Bennett struck out all 3 he faced. Dion Brown came in and struck out 2 of the 3 he faced. They were just blowing guys. Those bullpen guys were just blowing Michigan State hitters away. This pitching staff's deep. I know you've lost a couple of the season-ending injuries like McGovern and now Margulies. But, man, this pitching staff is absolutely deep. You're going to see it this weekend with the 4 games in 3 days and no Knopp pitching. That depth's going to be on display.
That was one of the highlights of this past weekend to me as well. By the way, haven't even mentioned it yet. Clemson gets the series win, 3rd in a row over South Carolina. Big time bounce back wins on Saturday and Sunday. Little bit of adversity, kind of the first adversity Clemson's really faced this year in extreme fashion. But the pitchers were so dominant in those second 2 games that you didn't even have to see a Dion Brown, guys like that until the midweek. That's how deep this staff is the fact that you got through a whole series and you still have some of your best guys that didn't have to pitch.
Absolutely. Bakich talked about having 18, I think he said 18 to 20, right?
Yep.
Pitchers that they feel comfortable with this year. You know, and that's, you got to take into account we've not seen a guy like Dane Moeller yet. The pitching has been just outstanding. You got a team ERA of 1.76. I can't remember what the number was, but I figured up the whip before yesterday's game, and it was insane. They're not walking guys. They've only walked 26 batters in 102 innings. They didn't issue any walks last night. They have been, I think I've said this before, but going back, entering the fall, pitching was the concern I had. Coming out of the fall, you know, I felt a lot better about it, but no way did I envision it being what it's been so far.
You've just seen guys take steps forward, and then you've brought in some transfer guys that have been more excellent than I think anybody expected. Look at Michael Sharman. I was not thinking that Michael Sharman was going to be a starter at any point this year, even after the fall, when we're hearing that he had a great fall. I would never have expected him to be a Saturday starter on the second weekend of the season. And here we are, and he's the ACC pitcher of the week and the D1 player of the week. Like, you've had some really pleasant surprises, but to me, there are none bigger than Michael Sharman.
Yeah, I don't know that he was going to be a starter. I mean, me and you talked about that plenty of times. I think if Titsworth is healthy, he's probably the Saturday starter, you know, and Sharman's out there kind of by default, you know, to start the season. And he's been so good. He's kind of anchored the rotation. He's actually been the ace, not Knock. You know, he's so good. You can't take him out now. I mean, it's just, he's kind of locked in there. And to me, I kind of like Titsworth coming out of the bullpen. That's just me. You know, I think he'd be fine in either role. But coming out of the pen, it gives you the opportunity to use him more than once each weekend. But the start that Sharman has had just which allows Titsworth to stay in the bullpen, just adds that much more depth to that bullpen that's already got plenty.
All right, so let's talk about it game by game, because there were some positives, some negatives in both. But we got to start with the big negative, which was Friday night. Tough shutout loss. Not a lot went right for the Tigers. I will say, I think personally that the best thing that came of that game was that Aiden Canuck was able to come back out for innings 4 and 5 after the third and save the bullpen at that point. You didn't have to burn that many pitchers after a big time third inning where there were several hits, 3 wild pitches in a row, walks, hit by pitch. The fact that he was able to come back out and have 2 scoreless innings after that was huge and gave Clemson a chance to come back and win the game. However, offense didn't give you anything at all to help him out.
Yeah, he rebounded nicely after that 4-run third. Matter of fact, I think he set the next 6 down in a row. He still struck out 8, even though he did walk 3 and give up 3 hits, had some wild pitches, and he did hit a guy too. It was the only performance so far this season that the pitchers haven't been outstanding. LaGuernick got touched up a little bit for the first time this season. Then Dvorsky came in and gave you, I think he set down all 4 batters he faced. But it's just like you said, when Connacht comes out after that, rough third inning, and he's able to go 2 more and not allow any more damage, it allows you to not use a guy that you otherwise would have had to use. That way you were set up well for Saturday and Sunday. Although it turns out you didn't need a guy on Saturday, but you had one if you needed him. But sometimes it again, it goes back to this sport will humble you in a heartbeat. And sometimes it can be a good thing to get humbled. And I think this team got humbled on Friday night. I think they ran into a pitcher that was absolutely phenomenal. Gunther was at 7 innings, 3 hits, struck out 10. He was absolutely dealing. The closer came in, Valentine or Valentine, I think it's Valentine, right? Struck out 5 of the 6 hitters he faced and let you know about it at that. But those 2 guys, they were dealing. I thought it was kind of questionable to bring in your closer when you're up 7-0 and burn him. You wouldn't have him the next day if you would, even if you had him available on Sunday, it'd be in a limited capacity. So I thought that was a questionable move, but they got really good pitching performances on Friday. But that's about all they got. They had 12 hits all weekend, 4 on Friday, 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. Even though you lost 7-0 Friday night, and you made some uncharacteristic mistakes that you haven't seen a lot of, before that night. They rebounded nicely over the past 2 days. I'll be the first to admit, after that Friday game, I was a little worried.
I think you and the rest of everybody else watching.
Especially knowing Ant Phillips was going the next day. I thought we were going to get a really good pitching duel on Saturday between Ant Phillips and Michael Sharman, because both had been so good, to that point in the season. But, Phillips only lasted 3 1/3 inning, give up 4 runs, walked a couple guys. It didn't materialize the way I thought it would. But, yeah, it did not get off to the best of starts.
I saw a lot of South Carolina fans ahead of the Friday game upset that Ant Phillips wasn't starting at Founders Park or at DKS. A lot of people were mad that they were leaving him in the Saturday spot in that middle game, which I thought was interesting too. But you look at it now, I don't think any South Carolina fans after Friday were upset about Gunther's performance. It was dominant. It was electric. And really, Clemson had no answer for it. On the flip side,
go ahead.
On the flip side, what did you think about bringing LaGuernick in after Connacht? He's the guy that's been really good this year, but I think that's where you kind of miss somebody like a Jacob McGovern that eats up innings, that gets outs.
Yeah, when they brought LaGuernick in, it was already 4-0. And you could already, even though it was only the 6th inning, you kind of had that feeling, hey, this thing's not going our way, man. This guy's just dealing, got no answer for him. I was wondering why they brought him in that spot and not choose to go to somebody else. But it ended up working out. He had been pretty good before that appearance on Friday night. He got roughed up a little bit. He did strike out 4 in an inning and 2/3, but he walked a couple of guys, which has kind of been his Achilles heel when he's not on, when he doesn't have that command. That's what gets him in trouble. But because he only gave up one hit, it's just that he put some guys on base with free passes. I think did he hit a guy too?
I believe he did. Yeah.
I think he did too. Let's see. Yep, he hit a guy too. Okay, no, he had a wild pitch. Canuck hit a guy, and LeGuernick Canuck had wild pitches. But yeah, that was something I mentioned when they brought him in. I'm trying to remember who was sitting beside me up there, and I can't even remember who it was now. But that we were talking about it, how interesting it was that you bring LeGuernick in at that point, knowing the way that game looks to be headed. But still, at the time, it was still only 4-0. It's not like you were out of it by any stretch. Yeah, it was. I mean, so I could see both sides of it.
So they sleep on it. EB tells media members, we got a lot of series left to play. We're not going to panic, essentially. Tigers come out, dominant performance from Michael Sharman, get a big win against kind of a hostile crowd. I don't know. You could probably say better than I could. What did that win do for momentum and for this team going forward?
I would say the crowd was about 60-40.
Okay.
60-40 South Carolina. It's usually pretty even there at Segra. Well, it's not as tilted as you would think.
Okay.
I still don't know how you have a neutral site game in Columbia, but even still. But yet I think the performance that Sharman had that day, it just you sapped every bit of momentum that they gained from that win and how they won on Friday night. You just sucked the life out of it. There was none left. 78 pitch complete game, 67 of those pitches strikes. I think it was the highest pitch percentage by a starter since like 2020. I forget what it was. A starter with 75 pitches or more in I don't know, a few years. But there was no momentum left. It gave Clemson all the momentum heading into Sunday, and they just took advantage of that.
Number one, to pitch a full game and still be in the 70s in your pitch count is insane.
It's Greg Maddux-like.
Yes, it is. EB even said he's a poor man's collegiate Greg Maddux. That was the exact quote. That's number one. Number two, the fact that many of them were strikes is elite. It's absolutely elite. He's not a guy that's going to overwhelm you, throwing 97 miles an hour. But he doesn't need to be, because he's so precise. His command is unwavering. And in today's day and age, I think a Michael Sharman is one of the most valuable kind of players you can have on your team.
Just can't say enough about that performance. He faced 4 batters over the minimum. You know, he was just it was something that I don't know that I've seen in a college baseball game. I maybe ever. I know for sure since I've been covering it. It was, man, and the game, it was 2 hours and 2 minutes, and the game was over. You know, it's like as soon as it started, it was done. I don't know that I've ever seen that. You know, it was insane. You know, you go get that guy 2 runs on that day, you're good, because they're not doing anything with him, and for whatever reason, they didn't make him work. They just routinely kept swinging and swinging and swinging at the first pitch almost every at bat. No effort even made to make him work and drive up that pitch count a little bit. They just kind of played right into his hands, and he made them pay.
Which was so interesting, because the night before, that's how it felt like Clemson was playing. Clemson's offense felt like they were swinging at a lot of pitches. I mean, some balls that were nowhere near the strikes, just not great ABs, right?
I think they struck out 15 times Friday night.
And so then to turn around and hand them that exact same performance while the offense is performing much better, was a really, really needed reset. And, Sharman won the MVP of the series. And I thought that that was right for so many reasons. Number one, because he had an all world kind of a game. Number two, because it completely shifted the momentum from the celebrations and how excited everybody was in Columbia the night before to taking back the dominance. And ultimately, I think winning the series for Clemson right there.
Absolutely, and it sucked the life out of the fan base. I don't know if y'all saw the crowd at Founders for the midweek game, but there was nobody there. After the way their season's kind of started and some of the games they've lost after they lost that series this weekend, this was the point where they needed to get it turned around, and they didn't do it. And the head coach is out there on Sunday throwing the pitching coach and the hitting coach under the bus in his post-game interviews, and so it's a bad situation there. I know that's not what you asked me, but it's that, man, it was that they're in a bad spot over there.
For their coaching staff, for their fan base, South Carolina really, really needed that series.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely. They lost to one of the directional schools over the opening weekend, Northern Kentucky or something like that. I forget who it was. You drop one to Army, who Clemson swept. You lose to Queens, who had never beaten a Power 4 team. Things were already heading in the wrong direction. Then you get that win Friday night, and it looks like, hey, maybe we got something here. Despite the fact we're dealing with some injuries to the pitching staff, maybe they're starting to turn the corner, and then those next two games just totally nipped that in the bud.
The thing that's confusing about it is, they have some players. They really do. I think the pitching depth really caught up to them. On Sunday, was sitting there, and it was pretty obvious that they didn't have anybody left that could throw and get outs. They ran through all their pitchers, and, they suffered some injuries. But by the time it got to DKS, it didn't really feel as nearly as competitive as it did Friday or even on Saturday.
No, and I thought I thought Clemson was going to take 2 out of 3, but I thought it was going to be one of those tightly contested series, and it really didn't turn out that way. And as you just mentioned, they just didn't have their arms on Sunday. They needed Riley Goodman to kind of give them a quality start, but he was only able to go 2 innings. He gives up 3 runs on 2 hits. He walks a couple of guys, and they don't really have much left after that. I think they use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pitchers out of that. After that, 3 of them only win an inning, 1 inning and 2/3, 1 inning and a third, and one of those was Hudson Lee, who got welcomed back to DKS. And if you're a Clemson fan, he got welcomed back in style.
Get this, JP, okay? Former travel ball teammates back in the day. Ty Dally, Hudson Lee. Grew up playing together. Ty Dally goes to Mercer. Hudson Lee goes to Wake Forest. Then comes to Clemson. Leaves Clemson. Ty Dally comes to Clemson. Ty Dally hasn't hit a home run all season after being the leading home run leader in the country. First pitch from Hudson Lee, home run.
Smoked it too.
You can't write it up any better. Like, what a story. What a moment for Ty Dally. We were talking earlier about how Jay Dillard was talking about, and I just ran so I didn't look like an idiot. Opposite for Ty Dally. He stood back. He looked at that thing. He watched it go out of the park. I think he sighed. He was relieved for a little bit, and then you dropped a bomb on me played. And then Ty Dally went around. And it kind of felt like, if you're a Clemson fan, things were already ticking in the right direction for the offense. And now Ty Dally's getting going as well. That's a really, really good sign. He was in the 9 hole. I don't think he will be for long. He's now on a 3-game hitting streak, had 2 hits last night. Things are trending up for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was fixing to say, then he had 2 hits last night. He was in the 7 hole or was it the 8 hole? 8 hole last night with Dillard in the 9 hole. I better not say that. I can't remember. Yeah, I don't think he'll stay down there long in the bottom third of the lineup, but it looked like he was, even before Sunday that there were some signs that he was starting to come out of that thing. He was hitting some balls hard. They just weren't finding holes, and they were getting hit right at people. I didn't think he had a good day of batting practice Saturday because I got to Segra very early Saturday morning, so I watched both teams take batting practice, and I didn't think he had the greatest of days Saturday at batting practice, but there were several guys I thought that about for Clemson that day. But yeah, he's starting to get it turned around, and if he gets it turned around and he starts hitting bombs the way he's capable of hitting them, that's going to make this lineup even that much more dangerous. I'm talking about a lineup that's scoring, upwards of 8 runs a game as is.
All right, I want to talk about this. A little bit of rotation with the defense, right? You've seen Fultz at third, you see McClatty in center, a little bit of shifts here and there. But what was really interesting to me was moving Nate Savoy to catcher on Saturday, leaving him there on Sunday. You brought Nate Savoy in thinking that Jacob Gerald was going to get drafted. He's a really good catcher, really solid. Gerald didn't have a great night as a catcher on Friday.
He had a rough night, yeah.
What do you think is the future for that?
I think that's still up in the air. I think Savoy's going to be the Saturday guy. I think that's who Sharman wants catching him. That's who's. I think he's caught him. I don't know if it's been every week, but at least most weeks to this point, if I'm remembering right. And Sharman even made mention of that after the game Saturday, that he hoped that EB wouldn't, take Savoy away from him. So, and EB said, no, we're not doing that. So I would expect Sharman and Savoy to kind of be paired together. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that Gerald was still the DH on Sunday and Savoy caught again. He did. He had a rough night Friday night there in Columbia. Multiple pass balls. There was probably at least one of those wild pitches that could have been a pass ball that he probably should have got. He had a bad throw, struggled at the plate. He did hit the home run last night. He's gonna do that for you. But they need him to be better than what he was behind the plate Friday night, and he was last night. It was his first game back catching since that night, and he looked much better last night. You're going to have nights like that from time to time. It's all about how you bounce back from them.
And also, he's a senior. It's a big-time rivalry game. A lot of pressure. You're a leader on the team. A lot of things that went into that, I think, for sure. And we know Jacob Gerald's a good catcher. We know he's a great player. But it's going to be interesting to see if his hitting is affected one way or the other by if he's catching or not.
That's a good point because I don't think he did anything on Sunday when he was the DH. I think I got it pulled up right here so I can check right quick.
And I don't think he did anything on Saturday either, did he?
No. Let's see. He was 0 for 3. He did walk once. He scored a couple runs. But yeah, it's different when you're just sitting in the dugout waiting to hit and you're not on the field. It could definitely impact, not intentionally. It's a mental thing. Yeah. It can definitely have an impact on, I don't know, maybe focus and how you approach things. And he's certainly not used to being a DH. He's been the everyday catcher for a while now. And for me, another interesting thing is how long does McClatty stay in center, with Clavon struggling, and will Fultz end up being the guy at third? Because I think we both kind of thought he'd end up being the guy at third. But I think we both thought that it would be McClatty that might end up being not playing as much with Clavon in center. But it's kind of turned, and because coming into the season, I was not a big believer in McClatty playing in the outfield. I still got flashbacks of him playing out there, struggling in right from Arlington last year. But man, he's been dynamite out there. He's made some really, really impressive catches. He had at least one last night, that running catch he made going towards the ball out there. He's been really good defensively. It might turn out to where Clavon's the odd man out. Particularly the way he struggled at the plate.
Yeah, he saved a couple runs with that last night, and it was huge. But Overall, McClatty has pretty much proven himself indispensable through these first few weeks. You got to find a spot for him somewhere. And he's a good enough defender. He's athletic enough that I don't think that means he should be a DH at any point, right?
Oh hell,
So you've got to decide, is he going to play third? Is he going to be in the outfield? I think you feel pretty good about Ty Daly, Nate Savoy. But I do feel for Clavon because it's a tough situation to go straight into. Had a really rough night Friday against South Carolina, but he wasn't the only one. A lot of guys did. And I'm interested to see how long it takes him to regain trust, regain opportunities after that. And, he got one last night and he played pretty well. So I think he's a really good center fielder,
oh, he has been fantastic out there.
but I don't know what you do with Fultz then. That's the thing that's tricky. Good problem to have.
I think you go with the hot hand, and right now McClatty's certainly got a hot hand. He's hitting like 381. He's got 4 home runs, and he's shown he'll go hit one out the opposite way. He's not up there trying to pull it every time. He's hitting all levels of the field. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. I think when you go back to Clavon, it's easy to forget he's still just a sophomore. He's still just a young guy. Although Fultz is a freshman, but the sample size with Fultz is still small, but not everybody can play every day.
McClatty looks so much more polished than he ever has. When he comes up, I have confidence. I feel pretty sure that he's going to find a way to get on base. And in the past, he's had flashes. He's had a couple of games at a time where he's done that, but he's never put together anything like the first few weeks of the season where he's just been downright dominant.
He has grown so much since he's been on campus. Last year, it was all about finding a way to be consistent. He would do something really good, and then he'd have a brain fart, or couldn't get a bunt down, or throw it to a wrong base, or get picked off. It was just those kind of things. And outside of him maybe throwing to the wrong base in the opener against Army, I don't think he's had any defensive lapses, not that I can think of off the top of my head. And he's been dynamite at the plate. He has absolutely been getting it done. Again, he's hitting 381. He's slugging 714. He has stolen 5 bases, which doesn't really get talked about. That's the most on the team at this point in the season. He's 5 out of 6 in steals. So I mean, he's kind of a do it all kind of guy. He can hit for power. He can just go up there and go the other way and hit one into a gap if you need him to move a guy over. He has just become a really good player. When he's been so inconsistent his first couple of years, and now he's figured out a way to find that consistency.
Talking about consistency, he only has one game all season without a hit, and it was the Friday night game against South Carolina. He's got 3 multi-hit games, has scored 11 runs, 14 RBIs. That's a guy that's generating a lot of offense. And with him in Purify in that 1 and 2 spot, you feel pretty confident about how it's starting off. And then you don't really get much of a break after that.
They set the table well for the guys in the middle of that lineup, like Savoy and Gerald. Golly, who am I forgetting? There's somebody I'm forgetting in the middle of that lineup. But those guys in the guy. Well, I'm talking about for the 3, 4, and 5 hitters, maybe even the 6 hitters. Sometimes they set the table up so well for those guys. It's a rarity when at least Gaffney. That's what I'm forgetting, Luke Gaffney. But it's a rarity where at least one of those guys isn't getting on base. Sometimes both of them are getting on base through each time through the order.
My light just went out. Okay.
Oh, that did not sound like a gong at all.
I thought it was my computer blowing up. I was like, all right, what's next? Honestly.
Oh, there it is.
JP, tell me your thoughts on Luke Gaffney while I try to reconfigure my lamp.
We got to get you a LED light.
Well,
He he's hitting 381 too. I mean, we talk about the growth that McClatty's had. Gaffney's a guy that just looks like a different dude over the last few weeks of last season. He's a guy that doesn't have good body language. You can tell he's kind of struggling with confidence. He's just not had the season that everyone, including himself, envisioned, during his first season at Clemson. He's having it so far during his second season at Clemson, though. He's already he hit his second home run last night. He's got 9 RBIs. He's walked 7 times. Here's the big one for me. He's only struck out 3 times. And that is something that he did a whole lot of last year. He did a lot of striking out. His approach is so much better than it was a season ago, and it's made night and day difference for him.
That's exactly what I was going to call it, night and day. Kind of like my light turning off a second ago. We're back to day over here. His swing also looks better just when you look at it, to me. He's not chasing stuff nearly as much as he was in the past. He's proven that he can get you the big hit when you need it. He can get on base. He was one of the only guys in the loss to South Carolina that was pretty consistent, got on base a few times. He's somebody at this point that I have a lot of faith in being able to execute. He's been caught in a few weird situations a little bit with what happened where he tried to steal third. There were some little things like that. But for the most part, the mistakes have been significantly less from him and from the whole team.
His defense is back to being solid. I know he had the pop fly there that day that he didn't get, but the win that day was – I don't hold that against him, man, because the wind was whipping that day and everybody was struggling with fly balls. His defense is back to where it was, over the first third of the last season. His defense was so good over the first third of last year, maybe even the first half. He's been charged with 3 errors so far, but I don't think that tells the whole story. He just looks like a different dude.
And the Tigers defense, let's talk about that, because going into it, that was a weakness of this team. They had not been completely clean as a defense overall. There had been some bad errors. Obviously, we talked about it on Friday, some bad moments. I thought they played the best 2-game stand that they had in a while, maybe all season, in the last 2 games against South Carolina and then last night as well.
Oh, yeah, it's been much cleaner. They didn't make any errors last night. I can't remember if they made any Sunday. I don't think they made any Saturday. Oh, I take that back. Did Lichtenberger get charged with an error when he missed a little flare? So
I think just one.
So they had the one on Saturday. I don't think they had any on Sunday, if I'm remembering right. Let's see. I might have that thing pulled up right here. Oh, I do. They did have one on Sunday too. So, but that's one on Saturday, one on Sunday, none last night. So 2 in your last 3 games. That's a much better number that they were averaging over 1 a game, well over 1 a game going into the South Carolina series, and now you're averaging less than 1 a game over the past 3. That's a trend that's heading in the right direction, and it's kind of more of what I was expecting. These are some guys. We've seen different guys over at third, and Lichtenberger's new at shortstop. So not all these guys have, played together for several years. I kind of equate it to an offensive line kind of having to gel. And this infield's had to gel a little bit, and it looks like they're starting to do that.
That was a concern of mine in the first few weeks, and I figured they'd pull it together eventually. It's chemistry. It's getting to know each other, getting to predict what somebody's going to do. but it needs to stay that way as Clemson goes into ACC play because there are some really, really good offensive teams in the ACC that will punish you if you have that kind of error. You cannot allow a Georgia Tech, an NC State, somebody like that, anything from poor defensive play.
Yeah, once you get into ACC play, the competition's going to be so good, you can't be giving them extra outs because teams like Georgia Tech, Florida State, Louisville, Virginia, North Carolina, all teams that are on the schedule, those are teams that they're the type of teams that'll make you pay for making those kind of mistakes. You can't give them extra outs. And yes, Monty Lee's the hitting coach at South Carolina.
I had somebody say to me that watching South Carolina's offense feels a little bit like watching Clemson's a few years before Coach Bakich got there.
Feels a lot of bit like watching Clemson's offense.
You were there before I was watching Clemson baseball. How do you kind of equate the two?
They're very similar. Monty's a his approach is kind of playing for the big inning. He wants the crooked number once or twice a game. It's station to station, waiting on the big hit, which is typically waiting on the long ball. And when you don't get a lot of guys on base, those long balls are solo home runs. And if you're not hitting a lot of long balls, then, but his philosophy is driving the ball into the gap or over the fence. And, they don't try to manufacture a lot of runs by like bunting guys over and being aggressive on the base pass. It's more about station to station and getting the big hits. And, if you're not getting the hits, then you're going to struggle. And that's what's happened at South Carolina the past 2 years. It's very similar to what we saw at Clemson over his final 2 years there.
I don't think that South Carolina, on top of that, has kind of the powerhouse type players to make that work. I think they would really benefit from more of the manufacturing, capitalizing on walks, on a single here and there, because I think that's more how their guys operate.
I think South Carolina's just got a lot of problems right now. There was this story that John Whittle of 24/7, he covers South Carolina, put out last year after the season about some of the issues at South Carolina, and they were just damning. Like, they don't use TrackMan, they don't use their pitcher's lab. The head coach forgetting to put a guy on the roster for the weekend so he couldn't pitch. The head coach putting the wrong name on a roster. So that guy it was just one thing after the other. Pitchers not working on fielding. And their pitchers would end up making errors. It was just all kind of things. I don't know what his buyout is or anything. I was kind of surprised he came back. But they got some issues over there, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel right now.
It reminds me on a much smaller scale of the Bill Belichick thing, because Palmineri is a legendary college coach. He's beloved by people in Baton Rouge, won a national championship, stepped away from the program to retire. And you got to wonder if they'd be better off with somebody that's a younger guy, that's hungry, that's never done that kind of thing before. And I think that's what a lot of Gamecock fans are wanting right now. And I think this rivalry is at its best when both teams are really, really good. I think that's the trajectory that Clemson's headed right now with Coach Bakich. And as you said, based on the attendance at Founders the other night, doesn't feel the same way for South Carolina. So definitely some problems over there. But still came out, gave a competitive series against the Clemson Tigers. All right, JP, we're looking forward. All right. We're turning the page to a 4-game series against LaSalle. Why are they playing 4 games? Who's pitching? Is it going to get rained out? What's going on over there?
Yeah, they have not played a 4-game weekend series since I think it was 2010 maybe. So since Jack Leggett was there, if that number's right, I think that's what it is. So it's been a minute since they've done this. And you know what? I haven't even asked why, so I'm not sure why, to be quite honest.
I think it's because I think they said to eliminate a double midweek week.
That makes sense. Remember how many times they played double midweek games last year?
Felt like
It was
every week.
it there was a period of time where it felt like they did it a bunch of times there in a row, and I don't think they do it at all this year. Maybe I don't
I
think
think
they
that
play
was
any.
the
Yeah,
plan.
I don't
Yeah.
think they play any. So if that's the reason, I'm all good with that. LaSalle's only lost 2 games all year. Now, it's not like they've played the best of competition. They played Maryland Eastern Shore. Never heard of them. They lost to Delaware in a midweek. They took 2 from Delaware State. The third one was postponed. They lost to Delaware again in a midweek. That's their only 2 losses. And then they swept Coppin State last weekend. So it's not like they've played the best of the best or anything, but they're still 8-2.
Delaware, man, has their number.
It's a pretty good 1-loss record. Other than that, I don't really know a lot about them. They're 3-2 on the road. They've won 3 in a row. I'm more interested in the Clemson side of things this weekend, just the way they're going to handle the pitching staff, because as we all know, or if you follow baseball, I'm sure you know, Aiden Canuck's getting the weekend off. He told us Sunday after that final game against South Carolina that they were going to sit a starter this weekend. He just didn't say who it was. I had a pretty good idea who it was going to be, and it turned out I was right. But, he says this is something they've had planned. Matter of fact, last night he said since the summer that they were going to strategically sit a starter here and there to kind of try and preserve them for the stretch run. And starting with Canuck, I think it's a pretty good idea. The first thing people are going to say, "Oh man, what's wrong with Canuck? He's not pitching." I don't think anything's wrong with him. I think I remember I was told last night when he had the flu right before the season started that it had him down and out for 8 days. So that takes a little bit away from your prep time. And if you go back to last season, the guy was running on fumes by the time the season ended. And you got to do whatever you can to ensure that does not happen again.
That decision tells me a couple things. Number one, after the pitching injuries last year, that staff decided no more. We're not risking anything. And number two, he's got a lot of faith in a lot of guys, because that's a 4-game series. You were already going to have to add an extra starter.
Yeah, they put out the release today, and they got TBA on every game to be announced. He said last night that Dylan Harrison was going to start Friday.
Okay.
He said he was going to get a spot start Friday. And, Sharman's going to go in one of the games on Saturday. Fully expect Bell to go on Sunday. So the question is, who goes into the other game on Saturday, right? I kind of, do you let Dane Moeller throw an inning, or do you run Titsworth out there? I think those might be the options. We'll see what happens. Again, you got some options. You're not playing them. Is there a midweek game next week? Because it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series with Georgia Tech. There's no midweek game, so you got options. It's not like you have to save anybody for Tuesday. Even by the time you get to Sunday, you could probably use Eston Simpson for a couple innings if need be. But I'm kind of anxious to see this thing play out. And I'm not going to get to watch a lot of it. So when we do this again next week, I'm just going to be going by box scores. But I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out and how some of these guys perform on the mound, knowing you're not going to get 4, 5, 6 innings from Canuck on Friday on a weekend when you got to play 4.
At the beginning of the year, might have even been the fall, can't remember exactly when, Coach Backage came out and said that Dane Moeller was going to be on the Talon Bell plan, which last year meant starting in midweeks, getting 1, then 2, then 3 innings. But he liked him in that start because it still gave him the experience of being a starter, getting the game started, having the crowd, all of that kind of stuff, which makes me think that Dane Moeller might be in that role. I don't really think you bring him in you know what, in like the third inning. I don't know that that makes a ton of sense.
Oh no, he's got to start. Yeah.
So I think you've heard him say now 2 or 3 times that Dane Moeller is available this weekend. That tells me I have a strong feeling that Dane Moeller could get a start.
And I was wrong. Clemson does have a midweek game Tuesday. Is that down there in Augusta against Georgia State? So I wouldn't count on seeing Eston Simpson this weekend.
It'll be interesting.
But yeah, if you're gonna roll out Moeller, you got to throw. He's got to start. You know, you don't want him. You know, you don't want him to have to warm up real quick in the bullpen or anything like that. I think that's kind of a no-brainer there. So if we see him this weekend, I think he'll start probably one of those games Saturday and go in, and then you go from there.
I feel good about that. Excited to see him in action. Talked a lot about him ahead of last season. Think Clemson really missed him down the stretch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Somebody that was going to be a starter. The injury bug, they're doing everything they can to prevent it. The Canuck thing's a big example of that. But you're going to kind of get to see a full stable of guys with 4 games and then a midweek and then a series that starts on Thursday. So Clemson pitching's already been put to the test, but you're going to get to see a lot more.
Yeah, former Clemson Tiger David Miller is the coach there at LaSalle. I didn't even know LaSalle's baseball got shut down during COVID, so that's interesting. So rebuilding mode for them. So you're saying Clemson should win all 4, right?
What are you saying?
Yeah, that's what makes this weekend intriguing to me is how you handle the pitching for 4 games in 3 days, and do you indeed see Dane Moeller this weekend finally? Because, like you just said, not having him last year ended up costing them. They struggled finding a Sunday guy. Mm-hmm. You know, last year it wasn't until later on in the season when Bell kind of, I shouldn't even say solidified because he was on such a strict pitch count. You know, but he was on Sundays last year, right? Or was he on? I can't even remember, man. I'm getting so old. But I do remember over the first part of the season, they struggled with finding a Sunday guy after they had moved Canuck from Sundays to Fridays. But that makes this weekend intriguing to me to see what they do with the pitching.
Also intrigued to see how they handle the catcher situation. Will Savoy do 2? Gerald do 2? Will Gerald do 3? Savoy do 2? Interested to see how that works out as well.
My guess is they'll do 2 and 2.
I would think.
You definitely know one's going to go one. They're not. You're going to see both of them on Saturday, and I think it's a pretty safe bet Savoy catches the game when Sharman starts, and Gerald will catch the other one. Now, if that's the second game on Saturday, you probably see Gerald on Sunday. It just depends, but. And some of that depends on who's going to be the DH, who you want to be the DH that day against that pitcher. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Will Clavon get an opportunity in center field? Where will Fultz be? Does Jay Diller get an AB? Do we see a Dylan Harrison AB? A lot of fun questions ahead of this long series that you have more time to answer.
Speaking of Dylan Harrison ABs, you know, was it me and you? It might have been me and Marty on his Dude Rakes podcast. We were talking about the 12 hitters and we couldn't figure out the 12th hitter. Well, the 12th is Dylan Harrison.
Gotta be.
That's the 12th. That's the 12th right there. You know, so there's your 12. It might have been me and Marty that were talking about that.
For anybody that doesn't know, Coach Bakich ahead of the season said that he had 12 hitters that he felt very confident about that have to get ABs. And then over the last couple games, he said Dylan Harrison has pitched really well, but we are going to find a way to get him some at-bats. So I see you guys having some investigative journalism. I see what you did
there. Not really. I had to tell you about that later. But I tell you another thing I'm looking forward to. Dylan Harrison's been pretty good so far, right? That guy's a true freshman, and they're fixing to run him out there on a Friday night. Friday night start for a true freshman. I don't care who that comes against. That's a big spot for a true freshman. I'm anxious to see how he handles that. I think he'll handle it fine, and I think he'll be what he's been so far.
Well, the first time he ever got put out there, it was in a big spot as well, right after Canuck on opening day. He was the next guy up,
Yeah,
and that
and
was huge.
He started a midweek since then. He's come out to pen twice, and he's made one start. No, I take that back. He's come out to pen once, and he's made one start. So we hadn't seen him since the game against PC back on the 24th, where he went 3 innings, allowed a hit, no runs. Did walk a couple guys that day, but he's been really solid in those 2 appearances so far. See how deep he can go.
That's going to be the question.
If you can get 5 innings out of him that night, that sets you up for the rest of the weekend.
You're going to get to see probably Deion Brown this weekend. Thought he was excellent last night. Danny Nelson. A lot of younger guys are going to get opportunities, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Oh, my Lord, Danny Nelson. Jeez.
That kid, I mean, I'll say this. I don't envision him as a closer after this year. I think he becomes a weekend starter pretty quickly with how he's pitching.
Man, he was dynamite against South Carolina Sunday, man. He struck out 2 of the 3 hitters he faced, picked up his first career save. Yeah, I take that. Well, they kind of got this messed up. I think that was his first career save. They got him. Well, maybe he got one against Bryant, too. They're saying these stats here are a little misleading. It says he got a save against Bryant, says he got one against South Carolina, but he's only got a total of 1 here. So he got 1 or 2.
His first batter he faced, all right, was he have a curveball? Is that what he's throwing? Throws 3 curveballs.
He's that, whether it's a breaking ball, curveball, it's not I don't think it's a slider. That thing is nasty.
So he throws 3 in a row, all like 87, gets the strikeout, right? That's his first person he's faced. Next guy comes up, first pitch, 96. I was like,
we saw him throwing gas in the fall.
And I think the hitter felt the exact same way as I did. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Who's that kid?
When he comes out, he doesn't look like a guy that's going to be throwing 95, 96, and maybe even hitting 97 a time or 2. He just doesn't look like that guy. But once he gets going, he's got some firiness to him, man. He's going to be a good one.
He looks to me like he could be playing in the minor league somewhere right now. Truly.
I love his hair.
People are calling him what's that pitcher in the big leagues that has like the long hair? I can't remember. There's some guy that people say he looks just like, and it's funny to me every time I see it on Twitter.
Back said he used to have real long hair. So when is Priest coming back? I don't know. It sounded like he was going to be out for a while last time they talked about him. I can't really give you an answer on that one, my friend.
Haven't heard anything in a while.
Yeah, me either. Last time I paid attention, he was still walking with a little bit of a limp, or I shouldn't say a limp, but like it looked a little tight. But I think that was the weekend before last. I think that was the Bryant series, maybe. Starting to run together now, but it's not like you've been really missing him. So I don't think you got to rush him back. Left-handed slander. That's only for left-handed quarterbacks, my friend.
That's funny.
Oh, I like this one. Yeah, 10 limps. Yeah, I can see that.
There we
go.
I
can see that. I can see the hair. Yeah, that's a good one. The guy that pitched for the Giants. Who you? 4 games, 3 days. What's going to happen this weekend?
I think it should be a sweep. I interrupted the drum roll. I didn't even know. JP, that's like the second or third time tonight. I was like, what did I do? What wrong button did I press?
I think those are new. I think those are new things. I've never noticed them there before.
Oh, you better not show me where you can do this because I'm going to be spamming them all podcasts. All right, wait, cue it up. Ready? I think Clemson.
You told me to cue it up.
The applause.
All right, go. I got that too.
All right, ready? Take 2. I think Clemson sweeps this weekend, and I think we see a lot of really great pitching performances. I think the offense continues to excel, get a lot of new guys in there. Clemson comes away feeling good about themselves heading into ACC play. Thank you.
Perfect timing. I'm with you. I think they take all 4. I just think LaSalle is going to be overmatched, man. It's a great story what they've been able to do so far. They're fixing to jump on something they have not seen yet this year. I think Clemson takes all 4 and heads into that game heads into the midweek game with a lot of momentum, and they take it right into Thursday to begin ACC play against Georgia Tech.
And by the way, that Southern team is the same team that got beat by like 25 runs by Georgia. They're losing by an average of like 10 runs a game plus. So that needs to be a win as well.
Yeah, you've done more research on them than I have.
Just from seeing their scores here and there.
All right, then. That ought to wrap this thing up. I can go eat some late dinner.
Yes.
Can work on my elite retreat story before I pack up what I got to pack. And we're going to be right back here next Thursday.
Perfect.
If you weren't watching Monday, we have kind of pivoted here a little bit. We're going to do this every Thursday throughout the month of March. That way, we can talk baseball one night, and then instead of using the Monday show to just talk all baseball, because a lot of people want to talk football this time of year with spring practice and new transfers and a new offensive coordinator and heck, even a new special teams coach. So we'll be doing that on Monday, and then once spring practice ends, we will merge the two back together. But for now, Mondays at 7 is going to be business as usual, and we'll do baseball every Thursday, 7 o'clock, at least through the end of this month. How's that sound to you?
That sounds like a perfect plan for all our big-time baseball fans. We will have you covered. We'll talk pre-ACC play next week. We'll rehash the LaSalle series, get in the weeds with all the pitching, all the pitchers, all the people that you may see for the first time or the fourth time this weekend. I'm excited about it. I'll be at the game. I'll be there Friday and Sunday doing softball on Saturday. So we'll have you covered on the ClemsonInsider.com.
And by the time we do this again, we'll be talking about a 16-1 baseball team. Should be inside the top 10 over there at D1 baseball by then. We'll see. They kind of been slow to nudge the Tigers up there. I think they're only at number 14 right now. They only moved up one spot after taking 2 out of 3 from South Carolina. I guess that tells you what they think about South Carolina. But right back here next week, 7 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel. See you then.